name's Alex Quigley and welcome to Exploring Evidence in Education, where I tackle some of the interesting questions of the day and dig into the evidence. The first topic I want to explore is the issue of book gifting. So during school closures, we've recognised that there is a digital divide present in our schools where many pupils have access to technology like laptops where they can undertake remote learning. One of the more hidden issues is that many children have access to lots and lots of books, and they have a literate environment that supports them in the home that really boosts their remote learning, and yet many pupils don't have that access to books. And this difference is another of those marked differences that we recognise in our schools that we want to do something about to ensure that disadvantaged pupils don't fall behind their peers. In the last week, on the House of Commons Education Committee, it was a topic that was raised and politicians recommended that book gifting should be a policy that the government is exploring alongside other issues that include technology and tutoring, etc. Now, I can't help but support issues that try and focus on children's reading skill, and supporting that reading development is absolutely crucial to school success and to so much more beyond just the school gates too. But when you start to dig into the evidence on book gifting, you start to recognise that it's not unproblematic and that actually it's more of a challenge than just sending a book home. So it's an area worth exploring in terms of the evidence. There are projects that have dug into this area and have explored the possibility of book gifting and tried to capture whether it makes a difference to people's motivation to read, their enjoyment of reading, and their reading skill, their reading ability. One such trial from 2014 was undertaken by the Education Endowment Foundation, the Summer Active Reading Programme. And what the findings of that trial revealed, and it was a small trial, those findings reveal that actually it made a very small difference on reading skill, but actually, surprisingly, it made no positive difference in terms of pupils' enjoyment and motivation to read. And actually, children from disadvantaged backgrounds who had an FSM profile, who were in receipt of free school meals, those children actually didn't enhance their reading enjoyment. It actually had a negative impact. Whereas pupils from advantaged backgrounds, it did increase their enjoyment. So in many ways, this trial revealed a counterintuitive piece of evidence that it probably reversed the direction of travel we're seeking, in that in trying to gift books to children who don't have books at home, who might have disadvantaged background, actually we might have widened the gap in terms of their motivation and engagement with reading. And this is something, particularly during extended school closures and remote learning, that is really important to grapple with. Another such trial undertaken in Northern Ireland was focused on foster children and supporting them with what was termed the Letterbox Club, which was a book gifting intervention. It wasn't just the gifting of book, there were mathematics activities and other resources. But once again, the findings of the trial were rather disappointing. So there wasn't an improvement in reading ability and reading skill. That actually the reading enjoyment was also problematic. And when further research was undertaken interviewing children, those foster children, as part of this trial, they started to reveal that actually it had, again, a negative impact on their attitudes to reading, and what the researchers termed feeling book burdened, that actually paradoxically being gifted books had a negative impact on their sense of self, their sense of themselves as a reader, and it pretty much backfired. So these large-scale trials, they show us that simply sending a book home, just gifting a book, it's unlikely to be enough, and that the complex issue of children who don't have access to reading, they don't practice as much as their peers, and actually this impacts very much so on their reading enjoyment. So I think when you dig in and explore the evidence, it's worth noting the challenges that we face here, and there are no quick fixes. So what are the conclusions? So in terms of book gifting, it's something we should concentrate on, ensuring that children have access to learning, that access to technology, and of course to reading materials and to books. But there is no silver bullet solution here. We could send a pile of books home and that would fill, a ticker box in terms of access, but there's so much more to dig underneath. So book gifting needs to be supported with attention on reading motivation and the skill of reading. And there's something about the attitude of pupils feeling they might feel different from their peers if they're being given books. So we need to be really confident in targeting pupils here and not actually, paradoxically, having the reverse effect that we're looking for in terms of motivating people to do more reading, particularly during this extended period away from school. And we need to think really hard about the additional factors that support book gifting. So explicit guidance on how to read, when to read, might be specific guidance and support for parents and caregivers around how they use these reading materials, how they support their child to read, to sustain their reading. There might be some factors around sharing what they've read. We know that the social dialogue and the social motivation can be really strong for pupils in terms of keeping them motivated and interested in remote learning and reading. So, in fact, we reveal there's just lots more to consider. We need a multi-stranded approach. Simply sending books home won't be enough, and sending a laptop home won't be enough. We've got to think really carefully about how we apply this. So, having books matters, book access matters, reading for pleasure and enjoyment matters, reading skill matters, and simply sending the book home won't do the job in and of itself. So we need to think hard around policies in schools, any national policies to try and ensure that children have access to books and technology. They need to be thought through really carefully. Thank you for listening to Exploring Evidence in Education. I'll be back next week with a different topic and a different question to address.